There we go.
Hello, everyone. It is Laurie and Jennie of AstroPath, and we are here today. We already made a video about the month of August 2025. And what is it we're doing with this one today, Jennie? I'm going to let you tell me.
Well, we are going to make the horoscopes for that month. We realized as we were making the video last time that we needed to revisit what the heck we were doing. So that's what this video is. What the heck we're doing, which is essentially, yeah, just really highlighting some of the really intense components of the month of August, and that's what we're doing today.
Yep. So we're gonna really zone in on those real intensities of the month for each individual rising sign. So
Yes.
that's what we're doing. That's what we're here for. And before we jump into it, is there anything else that we want to talk about?
Well, I'd like to just say that I'm teaching some online classes coming up in September. So I am looking for some folks to sign up for those. So go to my website, which is below, to check out what those are. They're all online. You might see something familiar you've heard before and something new. So please check those out.
Great. Thanks, Jenny. I think that's awesome that you've got that put together. Okay, so if you haven't listened to our video that we did about August, it would be good to listen to that as well. So let's open up the calendar and take a look at what the month has to offer.
Yeah, so what we decided to do today was you've already seen this calendar if you've watched the other video. And what you'll see here is everything in turquoise and everything in orange that's highlighted, and even this little other orangey thing here, they all have to do with this big, crazy outer configuration that's going on in astrology right now, where all of the major planets of Saturn and Neptune and Uranus and Pluto are all in a very powerful relationship to each other. And during this month, what these turquoise and orangey squares are showing is the ways in which that massive configuration is being activated. So as you can see, this whole month is dominated by these major generational outer planets all talking to each other, and then the inner planets moving quickly and kind of pinging those and activating them. And so this is a really interesting, I hope, conversation about how all this stuff lands in your chart. What does it mean for you? So our goal is to create a fairly simple, we hope, horoscope for the month. And we're really going to focus in on these darker orange ones, which is Mars.
Right.
So what is this telling us, Lori? What do you think about this?
Well, it's telling us, in a nutshell, it's telling us that the period of time between August 6th and August 11th is really a real intense period of time that you're going to want to pay careful attention to, because that is when Mars is creating this grand trine with the outer planets, and it's also opposing Neptune and Pluto at the same time. So there's uh, a lot of support in this period of time, and a lot of an ability for us to see what's going on, and it'll that will make more sense as we get into the individual signs that we'll be talking about. But that period of time is really crucial. Of course, this is August. The sun is moving from Leo into Virgo, and that happens on the 22nd. And that's going to really be a shift that we're all pretty used to. Every year, this time of year, we shift from all this fun summer activity into this state of getting more serious and going home and getting ourselves ready to go to school, or our kids, or whatever it is. We're all getting more serious after that point.
Yes. Yeah, and so just to hopefully make it clear, the Venus ones here in turquoise, they are also pinging that configuration, but they're not doing it in such a dramatic way as Mars. But I will say that there is a commonality between what Venus is doing and what Mars is doing in activating that big configuration. And really what it's doing is drawing our attention somehow to our relationships. There's a lot here about relationships. So, in other words, in a nutshell, the key to managing this really intense configuration that we're all going to deal with is to focus on your relationships, focus on nurturing your relationships, focus on understanding which ones are the ones that are helping you, and maybe having to let go of ones that are not working for you. I mean, in the shortest possible or simplest way of understanding that is that as we go through this intense period of time, who we reach out to, who we talk to, who we interact with is becoming increasingly more important.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, and we're all in a little state of confusion, and that's going to last a while. But actually, I think this is going to clarify a lot this period of time.
Yes. And I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't mention the reason we have the Sun square Uranus down here. We are going to touch on that in the individual impacts, but it's serving as some kind of check. It's serving as some sort of, at least that's how I'm viewing it, some sort of check on, well, how do we integrate this big crazy stuff? Because the Sun is going to be in Virgo by then, and Sun in Virgo is all about, practicality, implementation, like, being helpful, helping other people, but on a very practical, tangible type of way. So I sort of feel like it's serving as this like checkpoint of how are you able to take all this energy and like kind of incorporate it somehow into something that you can manage, that you can actually take a step on.
Right.
So
Yeah.
anything else, Laurie?
No,
Mention?
I think that covers it. Let's dive in. Let's talk about what is going on.
All right. So,
So here we are, Aries rising, right? I think that the first thing that we really have to notice and pay attention to is that Saturn Neptune conjunction. And I'm calling it a conjunction, even though it's not exact. It is so close. These two are tied up together in a very close relationship. And for those of you with Aries rising, this is really significant because it's right there in your first house, the most personal place of your chart. The way I am personally feeling this connection between these two and clients that I've talked to, there's a real sense of push pull. And I imagine it in this case as there's some action that I have to take in how I approach things, but then as soon as you think you know what the action is you have to take, you get kind of overwhelmed or confused and step back from that. And there's just this push-pull of confusion, action, what do I do with this?
mhm,
It's a hard little nut. I think of this as a very difficult piece. And it's interesting because it is in a lovely configuration with the other outer planets. So, there's a sextile to Pluto, there's a sextile to Uranus, and there's a trine between the two of them. And that's the thing that is so profound right now going on. These are outer planets. They're not super personal, but where they land in our charts really tells us, well, in this case, this little difficulty that you're having around how you present yourself or what you're going to take action on is really, there's a lot of profound support coming from community with Pluto in the 11th and coming from, I don't know, your neighborhood, your neighbors, your siblings. There's a real wake up in what's available to access for support from there as well.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think the quick synopsis is as you experience confusion and intensity and this push pull of what do I do? Do I do this? Do I do that? I don't know. I just want to lie here. Part of your answer, the way to get support is to look to the community for empowerment. Like, what communities are you interacting with? What groups can you join? Maybe there's new groups, maybe there's ones you're already part of. That's the where Pluto is, and then the other pieces. And who do you need to talk to in your neighborhood? Do you need to talk to your siblings? The third house where you have Uranus is neighborhood siblings. I do think sometimes this refers to those close friends who you talk to daily.
Mm.
So that's the who you need to lean into. Those are the relationships that are really coming to light at
Mm.
this time.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then, carry on.
And then I think the next piece that we want to talk about is that period of time between August 6th and August 11th. What happens there is that Mars moves into Libra and creates a grand trine with Uranus and Pluto. I'm going to let you draw that, Jenny. There you go. There's that grand trine. And when we see a grand trine, it really is a powerful configuration that can bring a lot of support. And then the opposition brings some clarity, I think, about how to work with that confusion with the Neptune and Saturn. And the Mars in Libra for you is in your seventh house. So, what kind of relationships are increasing in activity? Are coming? How do you? I'm kind of stuck here, so I'm going to let you say something there.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think what we're getting out of is that once Mars moves into Libra on August 6th and makes this configuration, the first thing isn't necessarily in order, but it is in opposition with that Aries stuff. So first of all, what it's bringing in is you've got your community on one hand, you've got your neighborhood and your sibling. Now it's insisting that you also talk to your partner. Those can be your marriage partner, your spouse, but it also can be really any one-on-one connection that you're having, and it can be business partners and so on. So
And it
what
could
Mars
be somebody
does,
new that just shows up.
yeah, I mean,
Mars moving in there.
it really kind of brings that action point into that additional
Yeah.
social house, the seventh house. So it really makes this, so you start really feeling this intensity, and it's going to be obvious in those partnerships as well. And then it goes back. Do you want to talk about the Grand Trine more there, Lori, or
Well, the Grand Trine, Grand Trines are just fascinating configurations because it's really just a free flow of what
sorry, I'll be
happened.
right back.
Oh,
Sorry about that.
God.
Click the wrong
It's
thing.
it's really a free flow of energy that is sort of self-sufficiency. There's a self-sufficiency within it. So these are all in the social houses. So it's within that scope of being social that you're really able to it's a lovely time, right? It's a lovely time for you to be in social interactions. And in those social actions, you're really going to be able to see what those actions are that need to be taken through you. It's going to settle down some of that confusion of that Saturn and Neptune in your first house and allow you to understand how you can take action with this serious determination and your own spiritual intuition side by side. I think that's really going to help that. What do you think?
I think the other thing that comes to mind is this is a very powerful configuration. It has a potentially stabilizing effect, but it's also quite volatile. It's also to be handled with care. I think this is a time where energy can really ramp up. But also, if you get air and fire and Mars in the mix, things can get volatile. So I do think that that's something to consider too. And the idea here is to reach out and approach your relationships with some tenderness and some care, which is maybe not the easiest thing to do. All this is going on, but I think that's part of the picture that we're trying to paint this month because, um, Venus is
Venus is in Cancer.
yeah, like Venus and Cancer, and because of Venus's same action on this thing, there is a message around that. Like it could be really easy. Mars and Libra can be quite argumentative. So it could be easy to get stuck in that fire and airspace. But fortunately, with Venus in the mix too, it really is it's saying, hey, be gentle, be tender, allow for vulnerability, allow for feelings. And I think that is going to really help with having the more positive manifestations of the real uptick in socialization you can have here, the real support you can get from community and neighborhood and partner.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, and then the final piece is the fact that the sun, once it goes into Virgo, it's going to be in a square with Uranus. So let me just you can draw that one in there like that. And I don't want to get crazy about all the big meaning of this, but simply the idea that for those of you with Aries rising, that is going to give you a little bit of a road test where you're being asked to somehow take a practical step and apply it into your daily life as the sun in Virgo's in your sixth house. And it's sort of like all that happens. And then by August 24th, you have this opportunity to say, well, it's not going to be easy, but what is one practical thing I can do? What change in my routine? Is there something you need to do for your health? Do you need do you need to pick up a new sport that is helping you kind of feel grounded? Do you need a meditation practice? Do you need to start volunteering somewhere? It's
Mhm.
something that's daily.
Something really practical that's in service to others, especially with all the social houses being activated. I would think that that practical action, that practical routine action should have something, ideally would have something to do with being of service to others.
Yeah.
Go volunteer at
Okay.
the soup kitchen.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, and let's move on to Taurus rising. Okay. So for those of you with Taurus rising, well, let's start with the Saturn, Neptune, and Aries situation that's going on in your 12th house. This is this is a pretty interesting symbol for those of you with Taurus rising because it's really implying that there's a major stirring up happening in your subconscious mind, or somehow behind the scenes. There's something going on behind the scenes, and you might have this kind of feeling of clarity. Oh, wait, not clarity. I have no idea. Like, I'm confused. Like, oh, I totally get the subconscious pattern I have. And then, like, actually, I don't. Now, this can be, it's intense, but it also could be a really fruitful time to really develop a different spiritual viewpoint to alongside of the practice. I think this is an important time to look at that. Also, to give yourself a break. This could be really intense and feel like you're in this cauldron that's bubbling and boiling away, and you're not sure what's what and if it's helpful or if it's just painful or what. So I think this is a time to think about a break. And in order to do that, just as Laurie is illustrating there, the thing to do is to look at these outer planets and that are in a really nice configuration. And for you, what it means is looking towards your colleagues, your career space, your public space that the 10th house represents, and looking for some kind of empowerment there. Really leaning into that, looking for answers there, understanding that. And then also looking into the second house where Uranus is. So this can be on the psychological level, like how you value yourself, so your value system, how you think about yourself, but also how you handle your money.
Mm.
There's big changes going on with money right now, and it's really important that you don't just put your head in the sand and try to avoid it, but also recognize that there's an awakening happening here, and it isn't necessarily all going to be wonderful. There's big shifts happening economically on the planet. So anyway, that's where you want to look to with that confusion that I don't know, that's happening behind the scenes. Lean into your work life, look for support there. Lean into the way you think of yourself and look at your financial resources and other resources. And I think that's going to help provide a little bit of guidance. And then Lori, do you have anything you want to add about those pieces together or?
I don't know. The only thing that comes to mind is when you were talking about Saturn and Neptune in the 12th house, I was just imagining someone who you know, meets a new therapist and thinks, oh my gosh, this is the person I'm going to do all this great work with. And then 2 days later, it's like, oh, that is the wrong person altogether. Yeah, it's something in that area that's so challenging right now and can be quite confusing. And I think it's great just to think about, yeah, what can the support coming from your own this renewal that's happening around your self-worth.
Yeah.
There's really this something that's trying to wake you up to your own value and leaning in on that. Maybe you just don't friggin' need a therapist. Maybe you just need to do your own work. Whatever, your situation is obviously unique because of where your planets are, but there's a lot of support available, like Jennie said, that support is available. And then the next thing that we really want to talk about, I think, is that period of time between August 6th and August 11th when Mars starts. being activated, or Mars starts activating these outer planets. Mars enters Libra and it pretty much immediately opposes Saturn and Neptune, trines Pluto, and trines Uranus. So, what happens is a grand trine is created, and a grand trine is a very, very powerful configuration, a flow of energy that just moves unimpeded. I guess the opposition might impede it somewhat, but it's a grand trine. So there's a lot of, it's intellectual energy that is being activated. So Mars steps into that sixth house, and what you're doing on that day-to-day level is really amping up your understanding of your self-worth, your career or social reputation. There's some actions that you're taking in your day-to-day routine that are really amping up this whole configuration. And I think the gift of that with the opposition is that amping up can clarify some of the difficulty of that confusion behind the scenes.
Yeah. I also think, Mars in Libra is not particularly comfortable and really can bring in, especially in the sixth house. I was thinking about like the idea of sparring, the idea of sparring with somebody, having conflict of back and forth, and Libra's is trying to balance, and Mars and Libra is like maybe a little aggressive about how it's trying to seek that balance. But if that's the case, like just, step into it. Like maybe it's time to take up jujitsu, or like do something that's sparring. Maybe it's time to join, like a debate club, or maybe it's time to put a pretty, intense book into the book club mix. I mean, really those daily activities, it's time to kind of step into that and allow a little bit of push and pull, allow a little bit of like, what's my opinion here? And using those potentially co-workers or book club group members or whoever it is that you're thinking about, or your sparring partner if you are doing like a keto or something like that. Let that kind of be part of the mix, that you're seeking some greater awareness here. So I like that, and then the grand trine aspect of it really brings in this idea that it's how you're meeting your material needs
Mhm.
that these relationships are coming about. It's what's your livelihood, what's your work, what's your professional, thing that's happening. What is the way you bring in money? What are your financial resources? That's really what's being called into question, allowing you to kind of evaluate in a new way. If you have Taurus rising, which is interesting because it's an earth sign rising too. So already a Taurus rising person, part of the life direction is around what's tangible, how do I meet the material needs, how do I get grounded, how
Mhm.
do I let my physicality be part of my overall direction.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then what else, Lori?
Well, at the end of the month, we've got that really intense square that happens at this point. The sun has entered Virgo. So the sun has gone into, for those of you with Taurus rising, this brings the sun into your fifth house, which is the house of your creativity. It can also involve things like your children, love affairs. The fifth house is really where and how we give of ourselves. So the sun moving into that area and squaring Uranus, it's really asking us to, what is the practical way that you give of yourself? And how is that connected to what you're waking up to around your money, resources, or self-worth? This may be asking you to put your money where your friggin' heart is, like taking a practical action to give of yourself in a practical way with your money.
And like I like all those things that you're saying. And then there's like, and then if you kind of turn a little bit, it's like, and it's saying to you is all this seriousness about wealth and money and worth. And then, okay, so can you have fun? What are the things that give you pleasure?
Mhm. Yeah.
What are the tangible things that give you pleasure? So it's almost like, yeah, if it's stressful thinking about money and so on, then go to your pottery studio, and get immersed in that process. I mean, I do think about Virgo actually quite a bit with pottery. I like that, but that's just another, it's that way of managing stress. It's an invitation to take all of this like kind of very sort of yang energy and then drop it into a creative process,
Yeah, a practical,
Yeah.
solid,
Mhm.
creative
Or,
process.
spend time with children. Just make sure you make a little schedule that you get enough time with maybe your children, or maybe your grandparent, your grandchildren, or other people's kids. That could be another way that you think about it. Something that brings you joy and makes you feel really alive and like, okay, I can handle this.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I love the fifth house. It's so great. It's just, yeah,
yeah.
it's how you give love. And that's, the last statement of the month is how are you going to create something practical?
Yeah.
What
So,
are you going to do on a practical level?
okay.
Okay.
So,
Yes. Let's talk
Gemini
about
rising. No.
people with Gemini rising. So if you've got Gemini rising, this little tough little, I keep just calling it a tough little nut there, of the Saturn and Neptune conjunction is happening in your 11th house. So, this is there's some way in which how you are experiencing community may be a place of a lot of push pull, a lot of stress, a lot of confusion for you. And when we think about that 11th house, community, you know, I think of the 11th house is really, it's about our hopes and dreams for the future and the people that support us to that. It's where we receive from the larger collective, the larger community to support us. So it's really where we receive love. It's opposite from the fifth house. Fifth house is where we give love. 11th house is where we receive it. It may involve some friends, but it's really more like-minded people that support us. So if you're in some sort of communities that you don't feel comfortable in all of a sudden, or there's just something like, oh, this is the community I want to be involved with. And 2 days later, it's like, oh, no way, that's not right. This period of time is really going to help you kind of look at that and not make any drastic decisions, just kind of hold steady in that space of confusion and look for where the support is. Because there is a lot of support right now in how you activate or how you work with, how you manage this confusion. So, first of all, you're getting support from your worldview, your understanding of the greater world. This may be support coming through some travel that you do during this time, or it may come through some learning, some education. There's some way that a higher understanding is supporting this confusion. Could be religion or politics even. And the other place you're getting support is through your own awakening understanding of who you are. With Uranus having just moved into Gemini, there's a real wake up to yourself. And that's really bringing us to the crux of this little configuration with the outer planets that's so powerful right now. So what more do you want to add to that?
Well, the thing we really want to get at is that from August 6th to August 10th, there's a real activation of this coming from Mars, which is going to enter Libra on August 6th. And as soon as it does, it's going to end up, it's going to oppose the planets across from it. So it's going to oppose, these two lovelies, and really kind of light up it's really going to light that configuration up and really kind of bring it into play and bring it into question. And it's also going to create a trine to Pluto and a trine to Uranus. So this is a very powerful configuration that's happening in this window of time. And as soon as Mars moves into Libra, for you with Gemini rising, it's really going to be galvanizing your creativity. Your perhaps your generosity, your playfulness, maybe your desire to take risks, to take a brand new risk. It's really going to be illuminating that and kind of, I mean, I always feel Mars transits pretty quickly when they change signs. It's woof, there's another area that's being lit up. So for you, with Gemini rising, that is really sort of spotlighting this uptick in creativity, is spotlighting this group space. So if you are any kind of performer, for example, this is a very powerful window of time where your creativity is going to be put on stage. I mean, if that's something that you're doing,
Hmm.
no matter what you have going on in your life as a Gemini rising person, it does suggest that whatever it is that you are privately working on, the way that you show your love, the way that you show your playfulness, is going to really be obvious in the community space, in a public space that the 11th house represents. So that's kind of the first part of it. And then it's going to complete that grand trine all in the same period of time.
Yeah.
So what that does for you is it really is taking your self-expression and taking it to a whole nother level. The way you express yourself socially, the way you communicate with other people, your viewpoint, your creativity, all of that is kind of being ignited in this time period, which really, to me, does suggest this idea that there's something public that those of you with Gemini rising are being called to do. There's
Mhm.
something in a public space that's happening in this period of time. And it's very empowering. I do feel like there's a little bit of a caution with it, a little bit of like it can be pretty volatile. But I really like the way I guess how that would play out. I just had a thought about that. Just be careful about being too ego. If you're in a real ego place during this time, I could see that as something that would potentially cause some more volatility and some kind of explosion. But if you're really just operating in your place of finding flow in your creativity, and it's not just for you, it's just you being you, and it impacts other people, I think that that is a really good use of this. So, anyway, what do you have to add, Lori?
Well, it's just interesting to think about Mars. Mars is always considered the trigger planet, and when it activates things, it activates things. And yeah, Mars is not delighted to be in Libra because Libra is a Venus ruled sign. And it does, I like how you talked about it on one of the earlier ones about sparring. So, how is your creativity in that kind of state where there's almost a sparring activity around that? And how is that making it clear what your community, there's some clarity. An opposition always brings some clarity. So my hope for this configuration is that the support of the Grand Trine allows the opposition to bring clarity. So the confusion you're feeling around your community, oh, is this the right community? Is that the wrong community? Oh my God, what does community mean to me? If you're kind of in that state, that this shift that's not altogether comfortable around your creativity allows you to see your community more clearly. That's what my
Yeah.
hope would be.
Yeah, and in a nutshell, this is like in order for you to truly express yourself as a Gemini rising person and all the other things that are being brought into play here, you need other people to push against. Like as an air rising person, you need other people. And that where Mars is really saying like whatever your creative thing is, you definitely need others. You need partners in there. You need other people to kind of push against to bring out your brilliance. I see this a lot when I think about like tennis. I think about Wimbledon, tennis, and like you can't play good tennis unless you have a really good partner, a rival who's playing you. And so you bring out the best in each other. And I think it's one of my most favorite examples actually is that tennis idea because you cannot play brilliantly unless you're playing someone who's brilliant. So that really kind of brings this in is who do you need to push against to bring out the best in you? And that's ultimately the
Right, so
message.
that's a good question. If you're feeling really
Yeah.
confused about community, well, what's the community that will really push you?
Yeah.
You're not looking for a community to cuddle up in. It's Aries after all. You're not looking for a community where you can get together and feel all comforted and loved. You're looking for a
No.
community that's going to push against you.
Yeah. It's activation, right?
Yeah, that activation. I think that's really interesting to think about. And then at the end of the month, we come to that square aspect between Uranus and the sun once the sun has moved into Virgo. The sun
Yes.
will move into Virgo on the 22nd, and I think it's the 24th that this square is activated. And this could bring some, you know, Virgo, you have Virgo in your fourth house, which is the area of home and family. So this is like something about how you are newly understanding yourself to be and how that can push you to take some practical action around home and family. Oh my goodness, I can see how this is playing out in somebody's life, I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
me too.
Really interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
what is it that's not necessarily going to be comfortable, but you're going to need to, yeah, like really activate your own ability to under, waking up to your own who you are and using that to step forward and take a practical action around your home or family.
And from my perspective too, it's like, well, the question that's being demanded of you is you've had all this high octane energy spinning around. How do you land it? How do you ground it? How do you ground that change into the roots of your personality? You know, the sun moving into your fourth house and in that intense square is asking you that question. How do you bring it down to earth?
Yeah.
How do you keep your home life in a sort of grounded container that can ultimately really support you? But it's not easy because it's a square. So it's really demanding you to kind of, yeah, take all that spinning energy and ground it.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like you have to see it from a really new perspective.
Mm.
That Virgo in the fourth house, you have to really wake up to something that you can do that you've never been able to do before.
Yeah. No, I'm also thinking about home renovations because that's, it might be that you're doing all this stuff and you have all this creative energy, but guess what? Your home needs work. And even though you don't really want to, because you got other exciting things going on, you have to fix your house. I feel like that could, and that's what I was thinking. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Okay.
okay.
I think that's good. Let's go on to folks with Cancer rising.
Okay. So for those of you with Cancer rising, let's start with the Neptune and Saturn configuration that's happening up there in your 10th house, because I think this is a good place to start. So we're starting up here. That is not the right symbol. Um, I'm getting me a circle. There we go. So we're starting here. And for you with Cancer rising, this is a symbol for a lot of push, pull. I keep thinking about high octane activation energy that's happening in your 10th house. The 10th house is to do with your public view, like who you are in public. What is your reputation? What is your profession? How do you show up in public is really what's going on here. And with both these symbols here, you might not be sure. I mean, on one hand, you feel like you're taking authority, you're stepping into stuff, you're doing new things, and on the other hand, you're really confused about maybe the way the world's going and wondering, wait, is any of this worth it? Do I need to be doing this, or should I be doing something else entirely? Should I be preparing for some kind of dystopian future? I mean, how do you handle all of this intensity? How do you, understand like which thing to do? Now, fortunately, there is some answers here, and those answers are coming in the form of these really nice um, configurations to these other planets, and they are all right there. So that this is what you need to look to. And for in your case with Cancer rising, where these two planets are is not really the easiest thing in the world. You've got Pluto over in the eighth house. And what Pluto is saying to you is, yo, you need to set boundaries. You need to have a clarity around what boundaries to set. Like your empowerment is going to come from knowing which things to focus your attention on in your professional life or public life and which things not to. And that's what kind of Pluto is enabling you to do. And then on the other hand, you've got Uranus having just moved into your 12th house. So this is bringing into play some kind of wake up perhaps regarding some intellectual resources that you didn't even know you had, and some of those are going to be comfortable. There's probably some stirring up of some old things, old wounds, old patterns. It might also feel like you have no power, that there's these huge forces behind the scenes and you feel completely disempowered by that. And of course, we only have so much control, PS, very little. Um, so you're kind of waking up to that, but that's actually a resource in this case. This is you saying, hey, you know what? I only have so much control. So I think it's, that's how this configuration in my mind plays out. And of course, bearing in mind that these aren't things you're doing by yourself. These are things that you've got relationships involved. You've got probably some pretty intimate, perhaps business partners, and other, you may be married, you may have a spouse, who are in the mix here with whatever's going on most publicly, and that you also may have, those people who support your mental health. Maybe you have a therapist, or maybe you're doing some somatic work, or maybe you just really like to read different spiritual materials, and that supports you and supports your intellect. So those are the things that are really going to help you understand exactly what on earth it is that you should be doing in that most public place, you know. And then, Laurie, would you like to take it away for the
Well,
next chapter?
yeah, I just want to say that looking at this and thinking about a person with Cancer rising with that Saturn and Neptune up there at the top of the chart, I just think about all these kids graduating from college right now. The
Mm,
confusion of what the heck to do with my life, where to put my energy. It must be really, really difficult for a lot of people.
yeah.
And yeah, I also think, Pluto going into the eighth house could also bring in, yeah, resources that you didn't know you had.
Mm,
As you're in that state of confusion, your great grandfather might die and leave you a fortune, and all of a sudden you've got, other people's resources that you can fall back on. At any rate, however this plays out for you, what we're looking at then is the fact that Mars is entering Libra. And once Mars enters Libra, the conversation, Mars is the trigger planet and it really activates things. So Mars is not very happy in Libra because Libra is a Venus ruled sign. So Mars is a little, I like the word you used earlier. Mars wants to spar. It wants to have a bit of an argument. It wants to have something to push against. So one of the things that it does, as soon as it moves in there, it opposes both of these planets. And in opposition, it's triggering it from the area of home. So there's something about home and family that might be, you find yourself arguing with somebody in your family about what you're doing for your career, the choices you're making or not making. So maybe you're this kid that graduated and doesn't know what the heck to do, and you're arguing with your parents, whatever it is. There's this activation from the area of home, family, but then the thing that happens is that Mars forms a grand trine, an air grand trine. So this is an amazing, amazing activation. It activates all of the outer planets. So, this is really for you. Hmm. For you, the activation from the home place is really being supported by those two outer planets to see with more clarity what's happening in your career. I'm missing something important, Jennie.
well, I was thinking in thinking about Mars as a trigger, what it's sort of saying to me is like, wow, you better figure out this. Pluto in the eighth house kind of has this like a little bit of like a shamanic flavor to it, like a need to go deeper in
Mm.
the relationship. So yes, there's boundaries that you need to set, but there's also ones you need to open.
Right.
And so I think there's some way that Mars is saying, Mars is the planet of separation. Mars is one of the planets that says no.
Right, but a
Yeah,
trine says yes. So,
right. So Mars is is asking you to kind of dance that dance by triggering that Pluto planet and look at, what's the most empowering thing to do? What is the thing? So, do you need to go deeper into understanding something, or do you need to back off a bit? You're going too deep. I think that's what kind of Mars brings into the Pluto there.
mm,
And then over to Uranus, I think a similar question, like, what are you waking up what are you waking up to? Like, do you need to take that further? Do you need to shine a light in there, a different kind of light? Like, who do you need to connect with that might show you a different view? Because all of these houses together, the fourth, the eighth, and the 12th, they very much have to do with your sort of psychic intuitive self. This is
mm,
about your emotional self. This is about how you dig up these pieces, and but then you get to kind of put them in the subjective light of air, which I think is helpful. So all of
yeah,
that is
definitely.
what there's a ripple effect. As you do all that, it like shoots up into your professional life, or your public life. So
Or
there's a
maybe
little bit of a
there
public.
may be some way in which you suddenly, these family dynamics are really bringing you to needing to look really deep at some of the shared resources and
Mhm.
how your intellect and your unconscious is holding space for that. There's something very deep in this one around
Yes.
family and shared resources and your own subconscious and your decisions for your career in the future. I mean, this is really intense stuff for
Yes.
somebody with Cancer rising. I don't know anyone with that. I'm sorry.
And just the idea that the 10th house is one of the two most powerful houses, the first being the other
Right.
one. So here you are, it's like a very private part of your life that is being called to be played out on a public stage. And it does, I mean, this does make a lot of sense. I have this, of course, as
Wow.
public, and it does make a lot of sense for what I'm working on and the story that I'm trying to tell, and where that's going. So um, there's that. And then the other thing I think that really adds one little other flavor, as we've talked about, is the square between the Sun and Uranus. And what this is kind of saying, as the Sun moves out of Leo into Virgo, so therefore into your third house, there's a statement here. I mean, it's squared by Uranus. So the statement is, okay, and how do you tell the story? The third house is the communication,
Mm.
voice. The third house is the local environment. So how do you bring all of this intense shit, into your voice? How do you speak about it? How do you tell others about it? And it isn't easy. And it could be verbal, it could be written. There could be other forms of communication that you're using, but it is time to tell this story. And it might feel really difficult because there's a privacy to it. It's a very private story, yet you got to get it out. So, and that's actually going to help you settle and ground some of the intensity of it because it's Virgo. So it's in service to other people.
Yes, and the story has to be in service to other people. Maybe
Yeah.
it's workshops that you
Yeah.
teach.
It's like, all right, I got to go. I got some work to do.
Yeah, that's very interesting, isn't it? I like that.
Yeah.
That's a
Okay.
that's an intense one. Okay.
Yeah. Live to tell the tale.
Live to tell the tale. All right. So if you have Leo rising, we're going to start with thinking about that Neptune and Saturn configuration, that conjunction that's happening up there in your ninth house if you have Leo rising. So this combination of Saturn and Neptune is a very uncomfortable connection. It's a very uncomfortable. You think about Saturn wants to structure and stabilize things, Neptune wants to dissolve things. So they come together, and there tends to be, the way I'm thinking about it, a real push-pull. Like you feel like you're moving forward, but then you're not. So this is happening in your ninth house, which is the area of the chart that speaks to all the experiences that make up our larger understanding of the world. So you can think of that house simply as your worldview. You can think of it as, all those things that make up your worldview, which would be education, travel, politics, religion, all of those things. So, with this combination, there's some discomfort in that. You believe this, but you don't believe it the next day. Or, there's just this push pull. You want to go back to school, and then 3 days later, you decide that's a really bad idea. You want to travel, but you're not sure if that's really a safe thing to do. There's just this real push pull on that. So, as you are during the month of August here, really in that state of struggling with that contemplation of what to do, you want to think about where there is support to help you. And both of these planets are in a sextile aspect to both Pluto and Uranus. So this tells us that there's actually a lot of support to help you settle this area and think about what to do. And these are outer planets. So this support is also really tied in with the cultural changes, what's happening in the world. But the support is coming for you from a real empowerment in how you are in relationship with other people.
Mhm.
This could be a spouse or someone you work closely with, but something in that area of one-on-one relationship that is really supporting your understanding of your worldview. And there's also a new story that you're just beginning to see around community that supports you. So, individual relationships and community relationships are here to really help support this process. And then we've got the little trigger of Mars. And I'm going to let Jennie talk about the trigger of Mars.
Yeah. So Mars is here, um, just having popped into Libra. And that, I mean, we do think of Mars as a trigger planet. I mean, we do think of it as it's this very, it brings in action. It's like, all right, let's act. So as soon as it's moved from one side to another, you usually feel it. And so those of you with Leo rising, it's going into your third house, which has to do with your local environment, like your neighbors. It has to do with relationships like sibling relationships or cousins or other relatives. It kind of brings in, those people who are sort of at some point or other we're immediately your environment. It also refers to your voice, so it's really bringing some woof to your voice. It's really bringing I guess a bite to your bark. Might be what we're talking about here. And as it does that, it's going to be in opposition with these two planets. So it's really triggering, whoa, like this Aries stuff that's happening up in your ninth house. It's really asking you to take your worldview and make a statement about it. Express your opinion, express what your critical thinking about the world, and tell other people about it. And because it's Mars and it's in Libra, which it doesn't really like, there's definitely a potential for argumentative quality here. There's a potential for like wanting to like kind of drop a bomb and be like, you want to go? Like, I want to hear, tell me your opinion and I'll tell you what's wrong. It kind of brings in that. So that's one thing actually is a good thing to be cautioned about. But it's also bringing in the idea that it is in a trine with these. It's creating this wonderful Grand Trine in this whole kite configuration. And what the Grand Trine is bringing in is it's really just bringing in more support for those relationships. It's saying to you, hey, the way you express yourself with in maybe with siblings or just in general, your voice, how you're handling your partnerships, how you're handling your group contacts, the groups that you're part of in your society or in your community, is really lighting up all of those things. And it's saying, if you're not sure where to go out, where to go with the whole travel higher education thing, look to these partnerships, look to these relationships, because that's where you're going to get inspiration, you're going to get insight, you're going to have these kind of these jockeying conversations that are going to serve to really clarify what the heck it is that you should be doing here, which things should you be leaning into. So I think it's such a powerful period of time between August 6th and August 10th for exactly this reason, for exactly this clarification, knowing where to put your energy.
Yeah.
So yeah. something like that.
That's pretty interesting because it really does tell you in order to see clearly, in order to see your worldview and the experiences to continue building your worldview, in order to do that, at this point, you have to spar with others.
Yeah.
You have to use your voice. You have to have those conversations that might be uncomfortable, but you've got the support, and it's really going to help you to clarify where you're going with that. I love
Yes.
that. That's so interesting.
Yeah. It goes well with a Leo rising too. It's just time to, step into that Leo rising space, like
Right. Get
kick up.
get some heat in there. And
Yeah.
then at the end of the month, we've got that square. Once the sun has moved into Virgo, it moves the sun into your second house, and the sun squares Uranus. And that's going to really kind of like all of this stuff that's been happening that we've been talking about now has, I was going to say an opportunity, but it's more like a demand to
Yeah.
get practical in some way about your own understanding of your worth and how you spend your money. Put your money where your mouth is here. I think there's something in that. There's some way in which you have to do something really practical around your money or your resources. Maybe it's time to have a yard sale and sell everything you own because you didn't need half that shit anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I know it's interesting. It's something about I think the phrase that comes to mind for me is you need to put some skin in the game. You've had all these conversations, you have all these ideas, they're all floating around out there, and then you need to kind of exactly put your money where your mouth is. Like you need to make some kind of stake, like put some sort of stake in the ground about how you're going to incorporate this into your values and use it, uh, you know, something to do with your resources, how you use your money or whatever. But it's time to get some skin in the game. It's time to
Yeah.
be committed
Yeah,
to
it may be okay. I really have to commit to putting the money into that education I want, or yeah, something along
yeah,
those lines.
yeah, pay the deposit or buy the plane ticket if that's what you decide. I've got to go to Tibet on
Right.
your
Or
trip.
get rid of all the stuff because my worldview is now turning into this super minimalistic thing, and it's time to get rid of everything.
Yeah. Or someone else needs it and I don't. I've got a basement full of pots and pans and somebody's trying to just
Yeah.
find something basic. So it's all of those things really go well together with this one.
Yeah.
So I like it. Okay.
I like it too, but there you
All
have it.
right.
Okay.
So we're going to do that and we're going to move on to folks with Virgo rising. Ooh la la, saison. Okay, if you have Virgo rising, first of all, let's just start out with that Saturn Neptune conjunction in Aries that's in your eighth house. So there's something here that is both energizing, confusing. There's some clarity around, oh, I need this kind of structure. And then you're like, oh, wait, no, it's something else, and there's this kind of push pull that is going on because of those, because of these two together. And it's really the eighth house is so much about the deeper layers of self. It's that the deeper layers that come into contact with everybody else. And you find yourself in these positions of having to share resources, having to share money, having to kind of deal with other people's emotional, stuff. And having these two planets here, this is confusing because it kind of is on one hand setting up a wall. So you're like, oh, I don't want to deal with anything. But on the other hand, like flattening the wall with Neptune and everything comes in. And so there's a lot of, I get the view of like sticky taffy, like, in this house. And how are you dealing with other people's stuff? And so amidst all that kind of confusion and intensity, and maybe I end here and I'm not sure, and blah, blah, blah. There is some really nice contacts to those other outer planets, which is really helpful. So in other words, you're going to be looking to these other places for some clarity, hopefully. I like drawing lots of lines here. But you're looking to those. And what they are for you is on one hand, you're looking down at Pluto and you're like, okay, What do I need to do here? I'm confused. And Pluto is doing something where it's really clarifying things about your routines. It's showing you beyond a shadow of a doubt what some of your routines should be. I mean, having Pluto going through your sixth house is intense. It can have to do with, it can bring pain. It can bring like some kind of physical difficulty, but it's also very empowering, if you can get out from under it. So you're looking to those resources in your daily life that can really help you understand how to navigate other people's stuff. And then you're looking up to Uranus, which is in your 10th house, which is, your public life, your profession, your work life. So that's really helpful too. So you're kind of looking at that going, what do I need to wake up to in my life in order to know how to direct this really intense activation? So this one is not it's not particularly easy. I don't think any of them are really. But I do think that you are looking to those resources and even the people you meet in day to day and even the people you are interacting with in your work life. So
Yeah.
that's the gist. What do you think, Lori?
Well, I see that Neptune and Saturn there in that eighth house, and I just imagine someone who's just, yeah, so confused about how they're navigating their deepest relationships. Like someone who's every other day, I'm going to break up with I'm going to get a divorce. No, I have to stay with this person. And just that confusion, like, where is that depth of relationship? On the one hand, we want to stabilize that deepest parts of our navigation of other people's stuff, and on the other hand, dissolve it quick, get rid of it. So there's just it's a really challenging thing, and I think it's really awesome to think of Pluto as leaning on the empowerment that you've been developing in your routines, the empowerment of the strengthening of your physicality, maybe, and the waking up to the incredible social reputation or career that you're also creating, and letting that difficult piece just kind of sit there for a little while and lean on what is working better, because those other two areas in some ways are there to support the untying of that confusion.
Mhm.
And then we've got the Mars has just entered Libra, and Mars is always, we can always think of Mars as a trigger point. In this case, okay, so Mars has just gone into Libra. It's not delighted to be in Libra. Libra is a Venus ruled sign. Mars in Libra can, as you've said a number of times, Jennie, and is that Mars in Libra can be very argumentative. It wants to spar with someone. Well, it's got a good sparring partner here because Mars moving into Libra immediately puts it into opposition with both Neptune and Saturn. And oppositions, people tend to think oppositions are awful things, because they pull against each other, and it can be challenging. But at the same time, an opposition brings a certain amount of clarity. You can see what's exactly opposed to you. So in the act of sparring, you get more clarity. So what this is saying is Mars has gone into your second house. So with all this difficulty dealing with other people's stuff, you want to really get clear about your own values and allow your own values to help settle all that confusion, because your own personal values are what's most important here. And then Mars is also forming, whoops, I don't want a red line there. We want a blue line. Mars is also filling in this grand trine with this whole configuration. It turns into a kite pattern, it's a grand trine. So Mars is really just offering more support to those two planets that are supporting some clarity with that confusion in your eighth house?
Mhm.
I think it's really quite simple.
Yeah. Well, this one to me says a lot about that opposition between Mars and Neptune Saturn. To me, makes a statement about the health of your relationships, the health of the deeper levels of your relationships. So, in other words, really getting an understanding about yourself. And the balance and the inner harmony, and Mars is going to be stirring up that inner harmony and being like, "Oh, really?" And then pitting that against whatever's going on in those relationships. But ultimately, there's a little bit of an organic feeling to that, to those relationships, and that really it's about, so health meaning it's a moving parts. It's not like you just arrive and you're done. It's a daily adjustment. It's a regular kind of checking in, like, how am I feeling about this? And it is a little bit of a dance feeling. And that the more you can do work that seesaw in a healthy way, the more the better the impact on your material life, because the second, the sixth, and the tenth all have to do with your material life.
Mm.
The physicality of your body, the way you earn money, the what you do for work, like physically, how does it impact your body? All of those things, how you value yourself, what is the relationship between your self-worth and your bank account? All of those things are, are part of the Grand Trine. So the more that you can establish that health in the relationships that have to do with all those things, the more you're going to be in the positive place of the Grand Trine, the
Mm.
more of the stability and the intellectual positivity of it, like feeling balanced mentally
Mm.
in those places. So I like that. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And it shows you where to put the work. Work is the relationships. I mean, it is for everybody, but especially for this
Yeah.
relationship to self, relationship to everyone else that you're in these close contacts with. Um,
Wow. That's
so
awesome. I definitely can identify with this.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
you learn.
then what happens at the very end of the month?
Well, so then the last thing we've been talking about is the way that the sun keep trying to both of us keep trying to say Saturn. The sun moves into Virgo on the 22nd of August, and then it squares Uranus on the 24th. So this is a way, to me, this is a statement of like all this business you've been dealing with, the health of relationships and the material, the balance of your work life and all those things. It's like, how do you just sort of take all that and concentrate it in the self? And
Mm.
let your life move in the direction of service, helpfulness, practicality, practical, a plan. How do you take all this volatile, crazy, exciting yang energy and then put it into a practical plan that guides your life forwards? The first
Perfect.
house, very powerful. So,
That's
yeah,
perfect. I love that. I think that's really good. Okay, I think we're ready to move on.
I think we are.
Okay, so now we are going to talk about folks with Libra rising. And those of you with Libra rising, the place we're going to start here is with that conjunction between Neptune and Saturn. For you, that is happening in your seventh house. Oh, that must be a little bit of a challenging one. The seventh house is intimate partnerships, business partners, people who are really close in to you. So, this combination, the way we've been talking about it, is it just is bringing a lot of confusion. So, there may be confusion about whether to be in the partnerships you're in or not. There may be confusion around who this person is you're in partnership with. There may be confusion around stuff that's going on with your partner. It could certainly play out in a number of different ways. But there's some way in which there's just, you have this feeling like you have to take some action, but every time you try to push into an action, it doesn't feel like the right action. So you back off. I mean, that's how I see it working right now. So
Yeah,
the first thing I think you want to do is really look at that, acknowledge that difficulty that you're in the middle of, and then consider that there really are some points where you can receive a lot of support. And for you, where we're looking at this support is the aspects that are coming from Uranus and Pluto. They are both, those planets are sextiling, which is a 60-degree aspect, the two planets here, and they are trining each other. So this is an interesting little configuration. And I would say that you want to look, first of all, look to your creativity. What is it that is really brings joy to your life? What creative projects, what connections with children, with love, with risk taking, something in that area that you've been learning more deeply over the last few years is here to support you in deciding what the heck's going on with your relationship. And then on the other hand, there's also a real awakening that you're just developing around your worldview. And that could come, that could be many different things. It could be that you've just recently decided you need to take on some new study or do some travel or get into politics or whatever it might be. But these are the areas that are really you want to lean into as you look carefully at what's going on with your relationship.
Mm.
So that's it in a nutshell. That's the first piece we want to talk about. Now, is there more you want to say about that, Jennie, or do you want to jump right into the trigger point?
I think you covered it really well. So no, I'm ready to let's add Mars. So
All
I'm gonna
right.
put Mars in there. And I think, the next thing here is that Mars is entering Libra on August 6th. So we really want to kind of review this period of time between August 6th and August 10th because there's a powerful situation happening here that can have long, far-reaching effects. So Mars enters Libra August 6th and it opposes let's just start with the opposition here. It opposes these two planets. Everything Laurie's been saying about just this kind of confusion about your relationships. Who you are, relationship? Do you want a relationship? Are you in one? What's happening, etc. All those things that the push-pull feelings that can happen in a relationship that are probably happening now. And what Mars is doing by moving into your very powerful first house, it's demanding an action. I mean, the minute it moves into your first house, it starts going and it's demanding that you act. And I think what comes to my mind right away is just the cautionary tale of lean into the Libra part of it because you're going to want to be objective. This is not about, oh my God, Mars enters, now I need to immediately end things because I'm over it. I mean, that could be your response and that could be the right response. But the point really here is to use it to understand, like, is your life balanced? Is the life direction, is it balanced? Are you going in a way that you want to? You're a Libra person, so your life is a lot about relationship balance. There's a fierceness to cardinals, yeah, or Libra, even though people think it's all mild, like it's not. It really insists on something happening a certain way. um and anyone who knows people a lot of Libra knows that's true. So this Mars is activating that. It's activating the sense of self. It's making you feel like I need to take action. And the thing to do here is to just give yourself a little bit of space, lean into the air part of it, give yourself space to evaluate what
Mhm.
that is. And fortunately, because Mars also forms a Grand Trine, which is very exciting. Grand Trine is a very stable triangular circuit of energy. And because it also creates this grand trine for you as a Libra rising person, it is instructing you before you go making quick action, lean into that. What is the study that you want to do? What action do you need to take if you're doing a study or you're entering politics or any of these things that Laurie mentioned, or changing religions or what have you? Or, also leaning into, again, the creative processes. So if you find you get a lot of joy and space from playing with some child in your life, or you just know you need to get into that art studio and do some big wild paintings, or whatever it is you like to do, then do those things because it's going to help you understand what you should be doing overall. And this Mars trigger point during this August 6th through August 10th period is a very important time for your overall life direction.
Yeah.
Laurie, what did I miss?
Um, I don't know that you missed anything. I don't think you missed anything. I'm just thinking more about that Mars going into that first house. Yeah, you might find yourself being really argumentative. And yeah, go in the other room, do something creative. Find a way to, because that's not going to help. Well, it might it might help you get clear.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Interesting.
you want to really lean into the gifts of taking action and take action as much as possible toward your new ideas of your worldview, religion or politics, and creativity. Maybe there's some way you can bring your creativity and your worldview together. Maybe your creativity needs to lean more into political storylines or, whatever that might look like.
Oh, that's a good. You just made me
Just
think of
made me think about the
that.
creativity of the South Park.
Oh, totally.
Just, yeah,
Yes.
whatever.
Yes.
So
Look
there
out.
may be, see,
Oh
there
yeah.
may be some way that you want to bring your politics to your creativity. And that could be a way to really take action that helps you kind of settle down some of this discomfort around relationship. And it might not be your partner. It might be your best friends. I want to just be clear about that. It doesn't have to be, oh my God, my partnership is in trouble. It doesn't have to be that. Could be, but it doesn't have to be that.
No, I'm glad you're mentioning that because what I was thinking of when you first, when you started with Mars too, was the idea that if you are having tension with your primary partner, it's time to reach to other partners, those close friends. Maybe you need to go for a walk with a close friend and vent about your struggles. Maybe you just need to be heard a little bit rather than like the one relationship being the container for everything. I mean, I feel like there's sort of without going into a whole other world, there's a little bit of like a polyamorous feel to this. Like your main partner does not have to be your everything partner. You can turn to others who support you. And you can turn to others. Maybe you even turn to somebody that you don't agree with and you want to kind of like, you kind of want to battle it out a little bit. And that would be a really good way, a constructive use of that energy too. You might actually like find something out about each other, two of you don't. So it did make me think of that. And then I also love this because I have a friend who's working on a graphic novel, and it is time to be published. And this is a thing, the personal and the graphic novel is about an experience with a previous partner. So, you know, that kind of summarizes it. I really like that. So,
That's
anyway.
interesting. Yeah. And then what happens at the end of the month?
Well, the end of the month, you have the sun moving into Virgo and then getting to this pretty stressful square with Uranus. Um, which, when you look at this one, this is sort of saying to me, there's something about committing to those behind the scenes therapeutic processes that is going to really help you here. So there's a lot of intensity in this chart. There's a lot of high, action, and it's pretty easy to get outside of yourself with this too, and just be kind of off the rails. And I think that sun being squared by Uranus is a demand that you bring that back indoors, you bring that internally, you bring that into the internal space, and you look at the effects on your subconscious and your unconscious. And you might need to take some very conscious time away from everybody, either after this time period or sometime during the course of the month, that you really going to need to take a break, and take a step back and have some alone time. I think that that would really support the other intensity of this, because the sun going into the 12th house really is saying you need to take a step back.
Yeah, and you might need to travel to do that.
Yes, yes, you might.
So, yeah, I like that. Like, yeah, get away, spend some time alone, spend some time stabilizing yourself. Because,
Yeah,
yeah, this is going to be very intense for people with Libra rising, I think, with that
yeah.
Mars going right in there and triggering everything.
Oh, and that happens on August 24th. I forgot to say that. The
Right.
sun square Uranus. So it's 2 weeks after this whole Grand Trine configuration has happened. So, you
And,
know, it might be around then.
the only other thing I want to say about it is, we're talking about how intense it's going to be, and it will be. But that doesn't mean it's all going to be negative. There might be a profound amount of excitement around all of this.
Oh, I think it's exciting. I think it's just having to ground it in the internal space, but it's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's exciting.
Yeah.
So, all right.
All right, moving on.
Okay, we are going to move on to Scorpio rising. Okay, so for those of you with Scorpio rising, let's just start by talking about this pair right here. So this is Saturn and Neptune in Aries. And for you with Scorpio rising, this is in your sixth house. Your sixth house is the place of routines and habits. And what this suggests is that you may feel puzzled, and also, I don't know, maybe a little bit indignant or certain about the way that your routines are supposed to go all at once. So you might be like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to change this up. It's time to start strength training. And then a couple days later, you're like, no way. I just need to be in the yoga studio all the time. I don't know. I'm not doing the strength training crap. So there's something, this is a simple example, but it's this idea of like not being certain, but feeling very kind of heated and ramped up about what your routine should be. There might be, this is your sixth house, which is not, there could be a lot of stress here. And I think that I've been reading a lot lately about how the importance of stress in managing, like how stress can really negatively impact our health. So I think to me, this is a symbol for don't worry about it being crazy structure. Just make sure that you're finding ways to release stress each day. And, whatever that means to you, and what that means to you can further be informed by the way this configuration plays out with these other planets.
Mhm.
So there is a nice sextile here, and here, and also from these two. Sorry, they're not perfectly parallel. Okay. So what this is a statement of is as you feel this intensity in your daily habits, your routines, your work life, and so on, that you're going to want to look to these other two places for support. And let's start with Uranus. There's a sextile to Uranus. This is an opportunity. This is something that can be very helpful. This is a suggestion that you awaken to something about boundaries, something about the way you're navigating other people's stuff. It may be that you suddenly realize that you need to set a different boundary with a certain group of people in your life or a friend, or it may be that you're stuck in your mind and you're not feeling your feelings, and it's time to let that kind of intellectualization go a little bit and try to sink down into the deeper spaces of your emotions. So, but in any case, it's a resource. The other resource comes from home and family. Pluto is in Aquarius, also sextiling these planets. This is a way that there could be a very supportive family member. Maybe your home itself is a sanctuary that can help you understand what you need to do to reduce stress. Or, again, in family members, it could be something about your lineage, your ancestry that plays into this picture, something that you learn that is actually quite empowering, that enables you to go, wow, this is actually a generational
Mhm.
stressful thing I'm dealing with. And it's time for me to look at that bigger picture of, how do I undo generational stress or generational mentality? So, anyway, those two things both play a support. They're both kind of deeper layers. You're having to kind of look a little deeper in your life, but are really, really going to help you figure out what the heck should I be doing to manage my stress levels better, to release this intensity, to put new routines in place.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, and then, Laurie, do you want to talk about the Mars situation?
Yeah, I also, thinking about that Saturn and Neptune, couldn't it also be confusion about how to manage or handle a health issue?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which I mean, yeah.
I mean, it's connected. It's connected, but I wanted to bring that in too. You might be dealing with a health issue and, the doctors or whatever are telling you you have to take action now, but you're confused. Yeah, yes, I want to take this action. And 2 days later, no, I don't want to take that action. And again, I mean, it's the same thing, but just lean on the family members that are there to support you. Lean on, other people who you have deep, deep connections to. And then from there, yeah, we have to think about the trigger point that's coming from Mars entering Libra. So Mars is always a trigger planet. And as it moves into Libra, it moves into your 12th house. And this would certainly make sense with what we're talking about health issues, about issues of stress and how they impact health. Mars goes into your 12th house, and it's like, what are my under the surface, my unconscious beliefs about my health and about how I have to manage it. And, so this is a time where you really are going to want to go inward, spend some time trying to understand what your unconscious beliefs are about health, about how you navigate those things. And whoops, we don't want blue
No.
there. Thank you,
Oh,
Jenny.
you got it. Sorry. I was
No,
like,
you
wait a minute,
go ahead.
I have
Go ahead.
something.
You're doing
Okay.
it.
Okay.
So, as you're, contemplating those inner deep levels of your own understanding, it's helping you to see what the actions ultimately will be that you need to take. Mars is also forming a grand trine with the trine to Pluto, the trine to Uranus, and they are trying each other. So this is a grand trine. It's a kite pattern. It really just tells us that all of these pieces are working together to support you in seeing the clarity eventually of what actions you really do need to take around your health, around your day-to-day routines.
Yeah.
So what more do you want to bring in with that, Mars?
Well, I just think sort of taken together, this picture to me for a Scorpio rising person is a big statement about getting clear about those deeper levels of stresses, emotional repression, these deep things that we all learn to do in the society, and to understand how to start releasing some of those patterns into this much more robust sort of routines and health. I think overall, that's the real message I'm getting, especially with that Mars in the 12th house. It's giving you a chance to unleash or to open up maybe a little bit of the Pandora's box of issues that may be part of your health profile. And by the way, at the bottom of Pandora's box is hope. So it's even though there's a lot that comes out of it, I think this has seemed a really important time. And this is not an easy configuration for a Scorpio rising person because but at the same time, I kind of feel like you're born for this. You got Scorpio rising, you're supposed to go into that intensity. Scorpio totally has to do with the undoing of unhealed wounds, of healing them and bringing them forwards for better health. That's absolutely what Scorpio is about. And dare I say it, I don't want to tell anyone the wrong thing, but I would encourage you to seek out unconventional sources of wisdom. There's a lot of new stuff coming out. Dare I say it, about psychedelics and things like that that could really be an unconventional way of releasing some of these tendencies that could be very supportive. So not
I
condoning
think
that, just suggesting someone
I
just seeking out different things. So
thinking about Saturn and Neptune in the sixth house, all I can think about is dance.
yeah, I mean, yeah, unconventional ways of
Yeah.
gaining things. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. That's great.
I guess it's
Okay.
probably because I've been doing that ecstatic dance, and ecstatic dance has got to be a Neptune Saturn thing.
Oh, totally. That's great.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's why
Well,
ecstatic dance is becoming such I mean, it's happening everywhere now. It used to be occasional places, but now it's like, oh my God.
it's the whole therapy of physical movement. I mean, in a flow state. I mean, yes, perfect. So there's a lot of different ways you can seek
Yeah.
out this support. And then the final piece of this is later on in the season, you have the sun moves into Virgo, and then it gets into a square with Uranus. So this is not an easy connection at all. This is a demand. And what is being demanded of you here as the sun moves into your 11th house of community is that you share your experience. you let people know,
Mm.
or you even, you really let people know what you're going through, and you bring that to the community as a source of helpfulness, as a service to other people,
Mm.
to, tell this story that, and there's a demand that you do it. And I think it's sort of like the sort of the closing piece of like what you're trying to do in this idea of healing. The final piece is, you are not just doing this only for you, even though you need this healing. You are doing it to show the community a practical way forwards, in managing this type of stress.
Do
So
something practical in community. Ecstatic dance.
yeah, totally back to that. I know there's so many ways you could just kind of bring that right in. So okay.
Yep, I think
Yep.
that covers Scorpio rising. Let's move on.
Sagittarius rising.
All right. So for folks with Sagittarius rising, we're going to start with that little difficult combination of Saturn and Neptune. Um, which are together in Aries. And for you, this is happening in your fifth house. There's just something so challenging about these two planets being together. You think about Saturn always wants to structure things and, create a container and make things solid. And Neptune's job is to just dissolve things. So you know that they don't they don't really like to hang out together. But here they are, they're in your fifth house. How is that going to feel? I would suggest that there's such a sense of push-pull. So the fifth house is the area of our life where we give of ourselves without selfish thought. It's where we give our creativity, where we give our love to children or love affairs. It's where we take risks for joy and pleasure. This is a really fun house. So right now, Saturn in the fifth house always makes it difficult to have fun, or not that it makes it difficult to have fun, but work can be fun with Saturn in the fifth house. So at any rate, there's a way in which I expect for those of you with Sagittarius rising, fun becomes more complicated. What is it you do for fun? Because there may be a sense of, well, this is what I want to do. And then 2 days later, no, I want to do something else. So there might be just a real push-pull. Although, the fifth house actually is a lovely place to have this combination.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about someone in particular I know who is doing, all of a sudden, quite recently, doing a lot of painting, a lot of art. And you can certainly see how Saturn and Neptune can both be combined in art. All sorts of artistic endeavors require the ability to, dissolve, to kind of go into a mystical, dreamy state and do it with intention of Saturn. So, this is kind of, I think maybe less of a difficulty. What do you think, Jennie?
Oh, I think I agree. It does make a difference, the placement. And what I see here, Saturn could say, hey, you need to take responsibility for having fun. You need to structure it. You need to schedule it. You need to get scheduled in. And then this Neptune is like, but whatever you do in that scheduled time is sky's the limit. There's a transcendence available. So yeah, I think it could work a lot easier here than some other places for sure, because by definition, the fifth house is kind of like what you feel like, I want to try this, I want to try that.
Yeah.
And then the other piece I'll say, and I'll turn it back over, is the risk taking. Saturn might say, don't take any risks, and Neptune says, go ahead and take the risks. And I kind of like that together, because it means you might figure out how to take the right risk, you know, not overdo it, in other words. So
Yeah, being cautious to take unusual risks. Yeah. So, you know, this can be difficult, and maybe you figured out a way to work with it. It probably depends some on how old you are, how many times around Saturn has gone, whatever. But there is this challenge in that area. And, it could be happening around your kids too. It
yeah.
could be like, um, your kids are at a certain age that you're trying to let go, but you're still holding on. There could be a lot of confusion, internal confusion for you in that way, or it could be showing up with love affairs. Do I let go of this? Do I try to develop it into something more? There's many ways this could play out. So, what you want to do, first of all, is we've added in the fact that both Pluto and Uranus are in sextile aspects, which are 60-degree aspects to those two planets, and they are in a trine 120-degree aspect to each other. This tells us that they are really supporting your ability to work with this configuration. So for one thing, Pluto in your third house is really empowering your voice, empowering your connection with your neighborhood, perhaps. There's some way in which how you communicate with people in your neighborhood, in your, close relationships, sibling kind of relationships, how that empowerment might be really supporting you. And some way that you've probably quite recently are waking up to the amount of support that is actually coming to you through another person, a spouse, a close friend, a business partner. But there's really a lot of support for you to be getting clear about that little complication.
Hmm.
I like.
Yeah, interesting.
And then what's the next step?
Well, the next thing that we want to talk about is really that period of time between August 6th and August 10th, when Mars goes into Libra on August 6th. And what this is doing, it is just igniting this whole situation because Mars comes in, and the first, it's going to oppose these planets right away. So now in oppositions, we've been saying, I mean, technically an opposition is a hard aspect, but it's also an aspect of clarity. I always think of it as you're like up on one mountaintop and you can see over to the other mountaintop, and there's this clarity, of like, oh, okay, there's a vision. And so Mars activating these two brings in this vision, which I love in this one. It's pretty simple. It's like, hey, whatever you're doing creatively, share it with your community. Bring it to the community, take an action, Mars, to bring this into a visible place in community.
Mhm.
Now, Mars does not love to be in Libra, so it would be natural that there might be some hesitance, like, oh, really, I don't think people really are open to this or whatever. But that's, I think is you maybe take a step back and use the Libra kind of as evaluate, that you'll see a pretty clear path to, yep, that's the right decision, and how to do that.
Mhm.
Mars is going to instruct, on the how. It's going to say, no, you got to do this, because anytime Mars moves into a new sign, it really just really energizes some part of your life. And so in this case, it's saying, yep, this needs to come forward. And furthermore, it creates this amazing grand trine with these planets, which is just such a special little window of time to have this happen. The grand trine is a very stable structure. It's a potent structure. It is powerful. And what it's really doing here is lighting up the Uranus and Pluto. Mars is a trigger, so it's drawing these things together. It's taking that your empowered voice and, telling people in your close proximity, so that could be siblings, neighbors, that sort of thing, local environment. You're bringing your partner into the mix, so some kind of change in your partnership, and then all of that coming together, into the community. So it's really just sort of saying, hey, everybody, we need to come together and do this. I mean, in a nutshell, that's really what it's saying. Now it is volatile. It's fire and air. So I think the main thing is try not to be too hasty. Use the fact that there's a lot of air to gain a little bit of an objective perspective before choosing the action. Um, yeah. What do you think, Laurie? What do you have to add?
Well, not much. I guess I was thinking in terms of that community, bring your art to the community, or bring your concerns about your children to the community, or
Mm,
bring your concerns about, how you manage love affairs or whatever it is that fifth house complication bring it to community. There is some way that taking action in community is going to help you see. Um, it's going to help you see what that challenge is and how to navigate it.
Yeah.
And then we've got that very last piece at the end of the month that we also are talking about, and that is right after the sun moves into Virgo, I think on the 22nd, and will square Uranus on the 24th. Is that right?
Hmm.
Okay. So
Right.
once the sun is in Virgo, this is kind of brings all the energy of this whole period that we're talking about into okay, you've got to take an action now. You've got to do something practical that's very public.
Mm.
So there's some practical step that has to be taken in response to the relationship.
Mm.
There's some way that it's in response to the relationship. The relationship is really supporting you, and yet this action, you might have to go against the relationship in some way to take the practical action you need to take.
Mm.
What
That's
do you
interesting.
think, Jenny?
Well, first of all, I think that the sun moving into Virgo and then having this square, this demand placed on you that you bring it to the public, it sort of just seconds what Mars is already doing. But what it's doing is instead of doing it in the Mars Libra way, it's saying you need to bring it in as a service.
Mm,
So it kind of brings in the yin component of how you're going to share it with the public. So I really like that. It kind of says this is a service. This isn't just a conflagration of fun games. This is also a service that's benefiting people in public. And yeah, and maybe the pressure is around the partners like, thought this was just for our people. And now you're going big with it. So it could be something like that, like some kind of tension around the partners in the situation wanting to a bit more privacy or not
mm,
really maybe having a little bit harder time seeing the bigger picture as a service, something to help others. I don't know, something like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
that
I mean, that's
makes
the other
sense.
way, but
Some
yeah.
way in which you have to take this action for yourself or for as a service, but it's your action.
Yeah. Because it's your sort of decision making in your
Yes.
personal Sagittarius rising chart. So
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Okay. Good
All
enough.
right.
Moving
Let's move
on.
on here to Capricorn rising. So those of you with Capricorn rising, we're going to start here by talking about this configuration here, which is Saturn and Neptune in Aries. We've talked about this a lot. We've made videos on and on. And for you, Capricorn rising, this configuration is landing in your fourth house of home, family of origin, lineage, all of these kind of things that all come together to make up your roots. And having Saturn and Neptune here can be really intense because, on one hand, you might be feeling this kind of, I don't know, the suppressed energy of Saturn, the kind of something that is like a bit choking off that has to do with your ancestry. And then, and your family life. And then Neptune brings in this whole other thing where it kind of brings in maybe the opposite, this idea of like, what is the spiritual message of your whole lineage, or what's the respite you can have in your home life. So the two together, they're not like very comfortable bedfellows here. And in your fourth house, this could be rather confusing. You could feel on one hand, I need to stabilize, but wait, I need to expand and find this other new whatever understanding of oneness. Or, I mean, these are kind of at odds. So it's stirring up the stew, it's stirring up the pot somewhere deep in your psyche that has to do with family. So that's the first bit. But you really have some great links to these outer planets, which kind of brings in this, all right, well, look to these planets for some support, look outwards. And for you, where these planets are going to serve as these resources. So first of all, starting with Uranus here over in your sixth house, you want to look to your routines. There might be a change in your routines, a big upset you've had in your day-to-day life. And there's a lot of information in that. There's a lot of great information. What have you learned from that? Maybe you need to turn up, that those routine lives, and that's going to give you information. But that's going to support whatever this intensity is that has to do with the home and family. And on the other hand, you're going to look over at Pluto, which has recently entered your second house of finances and the way you value yourself, your values. So you're also looking over there to that, like, what do I value? Like, what is going to be more empowering here, for the family structure in general. So they really play some great supports to whatever this tumultuousness is about home and family, this confusion that you may have. So that's where you really want to look. Laurie, what do you have to add to that kind of little configure? What do you think of this?
Well, the way I'm looking at it, I'm thinking about the confusion in that fourth house. Should we move? Should we not move? Should we renovate the house? Should we, change our residency? Is grandma who lives with us going to die, or is she going to stay alive? Or are we, whatever? Do we want to, whatever? So I'm thinking about it a lot as the home and the people that live in the home. And then when I think about that Uranus and Pluto and how they're supporting it, thinking about Pluto going into the second house, people with Capricorn rising may have in the last year or so come into great wealth, or they may have lost everything. There's been a change in that area of their resources. And with Uranus going into the sixth house, the lifestyle, the day-to-day routines of lifestyle are changed. So this just looks like a move to me, or a contemplation of a move, but not being sure, being confused about it. That's what it looks like to me.
Yeah.
Clearly, these things can come in many ways, but
Yeah, and there's a ripple effect either way,
right,
right? Like if you're look, because that's a really great point. Like this could be as simple as that, those home structures, not simple at all,
right,
but what's the ripple effect into the day-to-day
right.
habits and your livelihood?
Yeah.
You know?
And you think about Saturn in that second house wants to, kind of structure that home in a new way. And Neptune wants to just imagine what it could be. You can just see how this could
Yes.
feel really uncomfortable and unsettled. So then we look to what's happening with Mars, which is always the trigger planet. And Mars has just moved into Libra, into your 10th house. What's the date that Mars moves into Libra?
Oh, it's August 6th.
August 6th. Okay. So this period of time between the 6th and the 11th of August is so potent because Mars moves in there. Mars is the trigger planet. And what it does right away is it opposes both of these planets. So, first of all, Mars is not very happy in Libra because Libra is a Venus ruled sign. And Mars can be kind of argumentative in Libra, but it wants to take action. So it goes into that 10th house, which is your social reputation or your career. So there's something in that area that suddenly the heat is turned up on, which is kind of forcing you to look more directly at what the issue is in the home. At the same time, Mars is forming a trine aspect to Pluto and a trine aspect to Uranus. So what we have here is this very stable configuration um, of a grand trine. So what does that bring in? That just brings in just so much activity in this. We really need to lean. People with Capricorn rising really need to lean into their their finances, their self-worth, their day-to-day patterns of behavior and routines, and really pay attention to what they can clarify about their living situation through the openings that are happening in the career or social reputation.
Yeah, and so think about all the relationships associated with those places. Like, do you have a financial advisor? Do you have someone who talks about money? Do you have partners that you meet at the gym and work out with you so that you can kind of process this stuff while you're doing something physical, which is where Uranus is in the sixth house? Do you have colleagues, people, even people from your past jobs that you've had and so on, who can help you? Because I think there's a big talking component. I mean, as a
Mm,
Capricorn rising person, your material needs are going to be met partially through your intellect or the way you socialize and talk to other people. So that's where where it meets the ground. Is like, what are those relationships? Who are those people that can help you reflect in this manner,
mm,
to contend with whatever this move is you need to make, or this deep emotional adjustment you need to make to new reality. Uh,
mm.
and
Nice.
then there's one final piece, right?
Right.
So the final piece is that the sun is going to go into Virgo on August 22nd, and then it's going to square Uranus on August 24th. So this is 2 weeks after this Grand Trine configuration. And Uranus is really issuing a demand here. This is a square, it's a demand, it's an insistence. And as the sun moves into Virgo and moves into your ninth house, it really is a statement about, what adjustment are you going to make? Do you need some education? Do you need to think about a service component about where you're going, like a service component to, like, there's a piece about politics that could be in this. There's a piece about publishing. There might be something that you need to, there's something about getting this out to the world in a more practical way, about bringing this, letting this thing in as an experience that is part of your worldview, that informs your worldview and
Mm.
informs the way you think critically, and ultimately helps you understand how to be of service to other people, like how to bring that helpfulness. Yeah.
Yeah,
What do you
maybe
think?
maybe, a teaching component
Mm. Oh
there.
yeah.
Yeah, because there's something practical that's service oriented that's coming out of all of this energy that's going to really need to, yeah,
Yeah. That's going to shift your routines too, right? Because Uranus, I was thinking of with Uranus there, this upset to the routines. But let it. You're going to have to.
yeah,
So,
yeah, definitely.
okay.
All right, let's move on.
We are going to move on now to Aquarius rising.
Okay, so for those of you with Aquarius rising, what we're going to start thinking about, first of all, is that configuration of Saturn and Neptune that are very, very close to each other right now up there. And, these two, they don't know what to make of each other, do they? When they come together, it's like, who are you and what do what the heck's going on here? Because Saturn is the planet that wants to structure things, that wants to put a container around things and work hard and make things happen. And Neptune, on the other hand, just wants to dissolve things and get all mystical and imaginative and dream about things. Doesn't want to actually do anything practical. So when these two come together, there can just be a lot of confusion and a lot of push-pull. We're trying to stabilize and then we're trying to release, and then we're trying to stabilize and then we're trying to release. So this is happening for those of you with Aquarius rising. This is happening in your third house. The third house, I think of the third house, there's a variety of things that show up here in the third house. How we use our voice is one. Our relationship with our immediate environment, our neighborhood, the people that we don't necessarily choose, but are part of our life, like our neighbors, our siblings, our cousins, those kind of things. It's all a matter of how we use our voice. We learn to use our voice in those relationships, which is why they're together. At any rate, there's confusion right now for how you're to use your voice or how you're to navigate your relationships in your immediate environment and neighborhood. So there's some way in which this is an area where, you might just decide, I'm going to have that conversation with my neighbors, or I'm going to show up at the neighborhood forum about education or whatever, and I'm going to show up there and I'm going to have this conversation. And then, 5 hours after you make that big decision, you're like, no way, I'm not doing that. So there's this real push-pull and this lack of clarity about how to use your voice and how to embody that area of your immediate environment and neighborhood. That's a that's not a fun place to have this going on, I don't think. I don't like that. I think it must feel rather uncomfortable. However, we have some real support here on how to navigate and manage this. And that is coming because Pluto is in a 60-degree angle, a sextile to both of those planets, and Uranus is also in a 60-degree sextile aspect to those planets, and there is a trine between the two of them. So if you have Aquarius rising and you are aware of this push-pull in that area, what is here to support you is this relatively new understanding of your own power, your own personal empowerment. When you go out in the world, people probably listen to you more now than they did 3 years ago. People notice you, they pay attention. Your personality itself is in this process of becoming more and more empowered. And that is supporting your ability to figure out how to use your voice. At the same time, Uranus has just recently moved into your fifth, bringing an awakening to your creativity, which also can support how to use your voice. I like that. It's really kind of simple. That little complication in the third house doesn't feel good, but the support is really sweet here.
Mm.
What do you think,
Yeah,
Jen?
I mean, this I know. I think this one is very much as an Aquarius rising person who presents a bit differently, maybe a little unusual, a little quirky, a little, well, maybe very inventive. Well, this one's all about inventing yourself, really, because the first and the fifth house both have to do with your self-expression. They're sort of different levels. I mean, the first house is just who you are. That's, the direction you're going in. The fifth is your creative self-expression. You get a little more agency about how you want to create yourself. So this one is probably the most personal one. I mean, just the most personal, exciting one that can bring about I don't know, one of the most dramatic changes underneath the hood. Because you'll see, I mean, none of these planets are above the horizon. They're all kind of, it's a very self-oriented situation. So I think that, and I also was thinking about like Saturn and Neptune together too. Like, there's a little bit of if you can lean back into a little bit of trust, it's like the Saturn allows you to schedule the thing. I'm going to plan. I want to
Mm.
say this thing. Maybe I need to write it out. Maybe I need to do it, and then the Neptune is like
Ah,
being unattached to the outcome. Like, I don't know if it's going to land. So I think there's a really nice possibility for this to be used well, especially during this time period when you've got these other supports, these other objective supports. So yeah, I think it's quite interesting thinking about this.
yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that you brought that in. Yeah, the Neptune allows you to just trust your intuition around it.
Yeah. No, and then sort of, the rumble happens when Mars comes in. Mars enters Libra on August 6th. And this time period between August 6th and August 10th or 11th, somewhere in there, is a very, very powerful time period as Mars enters Libra. And then it opposes, right, opposes we're just going to start with this part of it. It opposes these two. So an opposition it can be a tug of war, being pulled in two directions, but it also can be a clarity, the man that you see both sides at once, which is very Libran after all. Now Mars is not a huge fan of being in Libra because Libra is in Venus's domain, and Mars, doesn't want to deal with that. But at the same time, Mars and Libra can be very fierce. It can be very vehement about its point of view, especially in the ninth house. It can be very opinionated, but it also in Libra, you can really think of it as like, but desiring a balance of both sides, of all sides, a balance, some kind of harmony being found. That first has to come by pushing and prodding and maybe engaging in that tug of war. So there's something, Mars and Libra also desires, someone to push against. It
Mm.
needs someone. So here it really is bantering opinions, throwing things back and forth, maybe it being willing to engage with somebody you do not agree with at all, but doing it with taking some space. Like, you're not going in to prove your point or to bash somebody with your opinion. It's more about, can we have a balanced conversation about these intense things? I mean, the ninth house is certainly politics
Uh,
as well. So and both of these are about voice and learning and mindset. So that's kind of what it's bringing. And then also has the really nice trine, completes this grand trine in air, in those couple of days. And so this really is a very potent time for Aquarius rising, because this is a time when the most powerful house, the first house of self, is in a nice connection with the fifth house and a nice connection with the ninth house. Fifth house is your creative self-expression, and then the ninth is like your critical thinking, your viewpoint, your world philosophy, that is the accumulated ethos of your experience.
mm,
So this is a real time for really examining that, being willing to express your viewpoint, being willing to share with other people what's going on, and just using that air, the positive nature of air, to have an objective viewpoint, to look at yourself with a sense of humor, trying not to take the self too seriously in the same moment, and being willing to kind of enter into a little bit of a banter, a back and forth.
mm.
So, yeah,
It's interesting.
it is.
It is really interesting with that Uranus and Pluto, and well, Neptune also, all those outer planets, how this is going to play out in the larger cultural story that we're all watching so intently.
Yeah. And then there's a final little story here. What's the final story, Lori?
The final little story is that on August 22nd, the sun enters Virgo. And no sooner does the sun enter Virgo, well, 2 days later, the 22nd, it squares Uranus. So this is really, it's like all of the energy of this configuration kind of ends with this insistence that we take all that we're learning here and we do something practical with it in terms for you with Aquarius rising. There's something practical, some way of being of service to others in a really practical way. I think it's almost as simple as that, but you really kind of have to look outside of normal expectations, maybe like there's something unusual that's being asked of you for a very normal purpose.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. It's like the normal purpose is the practical way that you are the practical service that you are for others on a really deep level. But it's coming from a creative curiosity, something unusual.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I see it as setting kind of like a series of guidelines, like Virgo is an earth sign, it's practical, and this is your eighth house, where you need to, have some boundaries, you need to have some understanding of, how you interact with other people. So I sort of see it as like these like guidelines you're bumping up against, like, considering the shared spaces with other people, because this is a very volatile outward configuration with an air rising sign. Everything's outwards here. But then you've got the sun going into Virgo, which is saying, just make sure that you have an understanding of the deeper levels. Make sure that you have an understanding of, this is going to impact other people. And then if you enter into the situation with this attitude of, I'm here to help, I'm here to be of service, flaws and all, that you are it's going to provide a little set of guidelines of how to handle this energy, how to contain it a little bit, so it
I
isn't just
really,
completely
I
explosive.
really like how you talked about that. And I'm thinking about, how setting boundaries is a very practical way of being of service to others.
Yeah,
We think the
exactly.
boundaries are for us. Boundaries are for us and for others.
Yes. Yeah, what you say, what you will not say, what you need to, those are very important questions when you consider you. In other words, I think all of this is like, and you've got to, consider the impact of all the stuff on other people, because as I said, earlier on, it's like Aquarius rising. This is about you, a lot of your transformation, but the sun is saying, and you must consider how this impacts other
Right.
people.
Yeah.
So, okay.
All right.
All
Moving on.
right. So let's move to Pisces rising. So those of you with Pisces rising, you have this Saturn Neptune, which is kind of our starting point in your second house. Well, this is a thorny little thicket to have in your second house. I mean, first of all, Saturn and Neptune are they're kind of looking at each other like, who the heck are you? It's funny. I was thinking, I think that they are, yeah, they're quite at odds with each other. Saturn wants structure and containment, and Neptune's like, huh? I don't want any of that. Forget it. So I just want all of it. So I think there's something about these two that are kind of duking it out. And in Aries, they're hot and there's maybe a little bit of irritation. And in your second house as a Pisces rising person, this could bring in a lot of struggle around, oh my gosh, like who am I? Like I have
Mm.
some self-doubt. Like, wait, I have all this money, but I don't feel like I identify with the politics of the money, or maybe the opposite. I'm not making any money and I'm really struggling and I just don't know what to do. I mean, my job's being taken away, by, the politics that be, and I really do not know what I'm supposed to be doing right now. That's what it brings in. And the second house is it's not an easy house. It's a difficult house where we have to kind of dig at what are my values, what am I worth, what is the meaning of money, like do I need more, do I have too much, and so on. So while that thorny thing is poking you,
Mm.
um, it is very fortunately in a nice sextile configuration to Pluto, to Uranus, which are also entwined with each other. So this set of symbols really gives you an opportunity to look to some resources for help. And the resources you're going to be looking at are people in your family, people that you can have, interesting, enlightening conversations with in your family. So that it can be anyone you live with, it can be family of origin, family you live with, so on and so forth. And you're also going to be looking at the resources that come from deep within. Within you, as a Pisces rising person, you have a deep source of empowered objectivity happening right
Mm.
now. Like it might be, you kind of have to sift through some of your own psychotherapeutic issues or what have you. But ultimately, there's a deep source of empowerment that comes from your own conviction, your own perhaps spirituality in the way that you view the world, that is providing you with a much bigger picture, to support this, maybe this money question that's
Mm.
happening. And then the family is also saying, well, hey, we need stuff too. Like there's something that can be really helpful and instructive in knowing how to move forward in this area that might feel rather painful and difficult at the moment.
Mm.
What do you have to add, Laurie?
Well, I think you've covered that really well. I don't, yeah, it's tricky having it in that second house because it might have to do with money, it might have to do with resources, it might have to do with your own deep valuing of yourself. But there is a question there. There is a discomfort, a questioning. How do I manage this? How do I navigate this? And
Yeah.
then the next thing is that Mars is moving into Libra. And as soon as it does, it immediately forms an opposition to both of those planets. So it's kind of, first of all, Mars in Libra, Mars is not happy to be in Libra because Libra is a Venus ruled sign. And Mars just wants to take action. And Libra is actually a very action oriented sign. So there's some action that you want to take regarding either setting boundaries or understanding these deeper levels of your intimate partnerships. Um, so there's something going on in that area that is allowing you to grapple with and understand your own values. So Mars goes into that eighth house, which is about other people's values, other people's money, other people's resources. And as you're kind of looking at that, grappling with it, you're having to encounter and go deeper into your own understanding of this little complication in your own money, resources, or self-worth. So there's that going on. At the same time, we have that Mars is also trining Pluto and Uranus. So it's creating this kind of self-contained area of moving energy. It's just like a free flow of energy between Mars, Pluto, and Uranus. So there's really some sort of a statement here about your being supported to see clearly and take action on setting boundaries to clarify, help you clarify your own values.
Yeah, this is interesting because I think taken all together, when you look at the Grand Trine there, it really is an activation of, I mean, in a nutshell, your intuition. Those deeper layers, or maybe even like sort of like psychic information, like that information that you don't know how it got there, it just pops in your mind. So this is a real activation of that and is really saying to me, you got to lean into that voice. You've got to trust that. You've got to talk to the people outside of you too, family members, close, intimate partners, make other objective people like, therapists or, those sorts of people, because they're going to mirror back to you what your intuition is saying. That's what you're going for. And that's going to help you understand what move to make, how to embrace the activation of your second house, how to know what to do from that standpoint. So it's an interesting thing as a Pisces rising. Plus, your Pisces rising, which means you're walking around the world with this profound sensitivity as your guide. Like the temperature of the room, like the feelings in the room. So, and what powerful time,
Yeah.
for everybody. But geez, for this Pisces rising person, this is quite
Yeah.
powerful, pretty uncomfortable. I'm going to imagine.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's one other piece, which is the fact that on August 22nd, the sun moves into Virgo. And shortly thereafter, on the 24th, it squares Uranus. And a square is a demand, a square is a pressure, it's an insistence, like something has to give. And in this case, whatever it is that you're learning about, you need to make sure that you're considering the partners in your life. The
Mhm.
sun going into Virgo is illuminating, the support, the practicality, the tangible care and consideration that your partnerships bring you. And what this is saying is, of all this whirling around, make sure you consider that partner. Make sure that you understand that even if you're on a big visible stage, that you're considering those important partners in your life and how this impacts them, and how you talk to them. Uranus and Gemini is talking to
Mhm.
family members, so how you talk to your partner and how you let things be grounded in that is going to be very important. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really interesting because that point of that square is going to be pretty uncomfortable between your home and your partnership. There's going to be a real discomfort there, and it's going to be really, really important for you to just think along those lines of, being of service to not necessarily, you don't have to turn into a Stepford wife and be of service to your man, but to be of service to the partnership itself,
Yes.
and it's one of the wonderful things, just to throw this out there, it's one of the wonderful things about composite charts is you can see a relationship as an entity within itself. And to be of service to the relationship is not the same as being in service to a partner. Yeah.
No, very, yeah, that's a really good, important point.
Yes. Yes. We don't
Okay.
want to turn anybody into Stepford wives.
Hell no. We won't go. Okay.
All right.
All right. Well, I'm gonna close this out and say thank you, Laurie, for
There we
doing this
have it.
with me.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for watching.
This was
Um,
fun.
yeah, and we'll see you as we continue along in our adventure of trying out new formats.
Yes. Thank you, Jennie.
Okay, thanks, Laurie.
Bye.
Bye.